Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the UN Plant Based Food System Dialogue. And in this session, we're going to be talking about the economic impacts of a vegan food system. And we are joined by veteran economist Ken Hamje, PhD student in economics Pareen Sachdeva, and an activist, vegan economic, I call vegan donut economic activist. I don't think I know anyone who knows more about it than I do. So thank you all for being here and helping us understand economic implications of move to a plant food system. So, Ken, I'm going to start with you.
You know, I woke up a long time ago about the U.S. economy. I was university trained in economics in the 1950s, but I really never practiced it because I was shocked to experience in the real world what inequalities this profit system, profit-focused system was creating. The economy's become strong over the last 100 years, no question about it. But it was clearly not designed with the objective of serving the needs of all the people of the country, let alone preserving the one and only planet we live on. Now I think it's become clear to everyone that the U.S. economy was designed to maximize profits for the rich and to assure the continued dominance of the rich. It sure has succeeded in doing just that. So that was the design, and it's actually succeeded in carrying it out. But today in the U.S., the largest group of hugely rich people in the world have ever seen. I mean, it's just unbelievable, along with the shocking rate of hunger and poverty that's resulted from the imbalance of this money-centered economic system. And the trend is just ever widening income gaps. The width of the income gap now is 78 to 1
Wow.
on the middle income. It's just incredible anyway. So we're way past the time for system change. It's time to us to begin to take into account the real situation of the economy and make significant and radical changes, perhaps. So this is just the way we are at this time, and there's no choice about it, I don't think. But how do we get here is really the question. What put us in this money-focused economy system? So let's just take a little bit to understand this place of greed and separation and inequality so we can find our way securely to a place of sustainable care for all the residents of every country. In 1913, that was a long time ago. In 1913, on a beautiful island off the coast of Georgia in the US South, a group of 12 notoriously rich white men met secretly for 3 days to approve the final design of their own private corporation, which was to become the beneficiary of the well-known Federal Reserve Bank that became the infamous central bank of the United States of America. Today, that Federal Reserve Bank is still not federal, does not have any reserves, and does not function as a bank. Yet it creates the economic values and the dollars on which the U.S. runs. I mean, that's radical, isn't it? Since that economy is designed to maximize gross national product, GNP, it only measures and assigns a value to the work of entities and citizens which produce taxable income. Remember this, what you measure is what you do. We are measuring GNP. That's what gets in the newspapers, GNP in the stock market. So that's what we do. That's what we follow. And that's how we've oriented our society around numbers, around basic numbers about money. Very simply, your value to the US government is measured only in terms of your contribution in dollars to the US economy, to the GNP. The time and cost of raising your children does not count. Your time and cost of caring for aging grandparents or parents does not count. Your time and cost of caring for a disabled person in your family, perhaps, does not count. Your volunteer labor, caring for your community and those in need, does not count. Your efforts to make the world vegan and heal the climate does not count. And your endless hours of voluntary leadership in nonprofits and community events, along with your spontaneous acts of kindness, do not count. In short, all of your efforts that add to the humanity of the planet and the humanity of your community are not counted in the economic system of the United States of America. They just don't count. And that was the gift that we got from 12 rich old white men in 1913. Well, happening to be not a rich old man, happening to be an old man myself, I take exception to this. This is just not the society we want to live in and not the way we want to go. The value and motivations of the United States of America are corrupted by this type of a system. The only thing that's measured is growth and profits. This absolutely must change if we are to have a humane planet. It just can't work any other way. We've got to change it at the very basic measurement level. Remember again, what you measure is what you do. So we've got to change the measure. Some countries now are talking about happiness indexes, not smiles, but the fact that people are satisfied. So I think the thing we're facing at this point is that we're shockingly just distorting this point of the design of the value and operation of the most countries around the world. You know that the Federal Reserve Bank in the U.S. is reported to have maintained currently over 140 offices in countries around the world. Wikipedia reports that, and I quote, "The Fed provides a variety of services to more than 200 foreign central banks, foreign governments, and international official institutions," end quote, which may explain why nearly all of the current monetary systems of the world only value citizen contributions which can be taxed. Isn't that shocking? One institution formed by a dozen rich white men in the U.S. Has their hands in the pockets of the whole world. It's unbelievable to me. That's why I couldn't practice economics in my life. Do you get that? I mean, the meaning of me and you is nothing more than what we contribute in taxable income to the existing economy. All around the world, this economic system places no value on the very human contributions that mean the most to any community, to any society. The human care that's delivered, not valued. No wonder we're in deep despair and confusion today when something like COVID hits us, when our home and family need the care the most. We need systemic change, and we need it now. We've all had it, enough of this divisive work of 12 rich old men. So, Pareen, being in India, what got you involved in this process?
Thank you, Ken. And thank you, Dr. Rao, for having me on today for today's discussion. I think that this session, as well as the entire lineup at the UN Summit, I think that it has immense potential in creating a world that will be definitely different from the world as it stands today. And that is why I think that this is important. I wanted to be an economist ever since I was a teenager. But as I got deeper into my study of economics, I felt more and more disillusioned by the theories and the models that I had been studying, that we had been studying for years. And so my quest for trying to understand, this gap between the way we understand economics, economic theory, and what economics really is began. And I've come to think that the difference lies in the underlying incentives of the system. It's the way that the system has been going on right now. It's highly exploitative. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Even with me and my peers, the way we are in our lives in the job market, so to speak, the kinds of incentives that we have right now to be a part of the workforce or a part of the labor force is to be able to sustain ourselves. We hardly ever consider, or at least prioritize at the top, what we're passionate about. Our jobs are meant to provide us sustenance, not a means of survival, right? Not really a living or a means to happiness, like Ken has mentioned. So I feel like once we try to, um, unfold this and try to evolve from this anthropocentric understanding of economy as well as the ecology, the environment that we live in, and we try to understand that as humans, no matter how smart or wise we get, uh, we really do need to understand that we're not separate from our environment. We are a part of it, and I hope that through this conversation, we're able to inspire some of you at least to try and understand this at a deeper level and join the conversation and join the discussion on how we can uh, have an economic system that will fit into the bounds of our planet, into what our planet is and what it requires. So that's what I'm here for.
So, Krish, go ahead.
It's interesting that the meaning of the word economy means to manage one's household. And so now in a global context, it means to manage the earth and the earth's resources in a healthy way. The word ecology has the same root word, and it means the study of one's household. So it's interesting that right now the global economy is in major conflict with the ecological system. If we think about the model that the economy seems to be following, it's, promoting growth, promoting a lot of growth. Let's grow the GDP, let's grow the economy, let's continue to grow. But we need to stop to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of growth? So if we take a moment to think about that, let's imagine a tree. A tree begins really young and then it continues to grow, but then after a certain point, it matures. It no longer grows. If it continues to grow, it would grow too big and it wouldn't be able to support itself. And so the tree remains a particular size. At that size, it continues to bear fruit year after year, continues to, support the surrounding environment, but still thrives. It needed that growth phase in order to develop its root systems, grow to the necessary size it needed to be, and have access to enough resources that it needs. But then, it reached a point where it can no longer grow. If it does, it's a threat to itself and its surroundings. In the same way, our economic system has been focused on growth. But while, all the eyeballs have been on the economy and the economic growth, the health of the earth has been taking a sharp plummet. And, this is the tree growing too large. And so now we need to start thinking about new ways of thinking about economy in a way that is in balance with the natural world. And for that, we have a 21st century model of economics called the Doughnut Economics model. And I don't know, we could have a conversation about that and talk about how it broadens our perspective on what economy means and what it means to live within the planet and with the planet and in harmony with nature. So let's have a conversation about that, Pareen and Ken and Dr. Rao.
Yes, I wish I could share my screen, but thanks for bringing that up, Krish. So we have been focusing on growth, and what we've seen, especially within the last few years, is that unbridled growth is not the solution. And I think that the example that Krish has shared about growing versus growing up, just, look at yourself. There is a point after which we stop growing, whether it is in our height or the length of our limbs or the size of our brain, everything. There is a point at which we stop growing, and what we do is thrive and sustain ourselves and maintain ourselves at a certain level. Yes, perfect. Thank you for sharing the screen, Dr. Rao. And so, and unfortunately, there is no model in economics that talks about things that are beyond this. Yes, we do have the technological advancement models, but again, they do not account for the myriad of things that are changing. Can we have the donut on the screen? It's about 4 slides, 4 to 5 slides after this. So this is where the management as well as the study of our household, which is our environment, come together, which is the concept of planetary boundaries. So the Stockholm Resilience Center, this is where it all started, and they came up with 9 planetary boundaries that are essentially what we have to work with on our planet, which is our home. So that is what we need to work with. And then we also need to work with a social foundation, which is basically to ensure that everyone has access, equal and fair and free access to life essentials, right? Food and shelter and clothing, right? Those are the 3 basic necessities that everybody should essentially have easy and fair and equitable access to. So what we end up with is something that looks like a donut, 2 concentric circles, the inner one representing the social foundation that we do not want to fall underneath of, and the outer one representing the ecological ceiling that we cannot overshoot up of, right? And where we want to stay is in the dough of the donut. And if we are there with respect to all of our social foundations and all of our planetary boundaries, that is when we could really say that we have developed in the true sense. We are thriving in the true sense as members of the family that all of us earthlings are. So that is essentially what the model is. Krish, would you like to talk in depth about what the foundations and what the ceilings are?
Sure. If we think about it, no country in the world right now is doing really well on this. The so-called developed countries have exceeded the threshold of, have exerted too much weight on the planet, and so have a huge burden that they bear on the planet, and that's unsustainable. It's fundamentally unsustainable. And the developing countries don't have that exertion on the planet, but have failed to support, their population sufficiently with the needs that the population requires. And so all countries across the spectrum are still developing in this context because they're not at the place where they need to be, where they're living within the means of the planet while still supporting the needs of all the people. And so there's scope across the globe for countries to think about this and countries to go about how these things go about fulfilling the donut or achieving this new economic incentive. So within the donut, one way to think about it is through the lens of the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has created, but more specifically, the social fabric that we think, or that that we collectively think that all humans are entitled to are, access to healthy water, healthy food, education, income and work, peace and justice, a political voice, social equality, gender equality, housing, networks, energy, and health. And these are something that all human beings across the world need in order to live a life of dignity, a life with all their needs met, and to thrive within the planet. But while we go about fulfilling these economic desires for all human beings, we need to ensure that our collective load on the planet stays within the planet's capacity to sustain us. And so we need to keep an eye on, things like climate change, land conversion, biodiversity loss, ocean acidification, air pollution, chemical pollution, and other such metrics. And so we're going about devising a system, a financial system, to do just this. The current financial system is designed around growth. And so, it's not going to be very effective at allowing us to envision this new model. And for that, we're working on a new financial system called Aquarius, which is based on it's a plant-based financial system that goes about helping countries envision this new economic model and achieve this new goal. So yeah, we could talk about that.
Yeah. Did you want me to share? Try sharing again?
That would be
sure,
nice.
If
That
it
would be
doesn't drop
helpful.
you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm trying to share as well, but it's not giving me access.
It's not giving you access. Oh, that's okay. Okay. I can make that larger.
Can we go to the Cowspiracy infographic? That slide.
The Cowspiracy infographic.
There it is.
I think we
Up there.
just missed it.
Oh, this one?
20, slide
Right
number
here.
20.
20, yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it might be daunting to look at this. This is, I think, one of the most pertinent infographics of our century, I would say. But I want you to look at one thing at a time. And these are all the things, most of the things that Krish has just mentioned in terms of the ecological ceiling and our planetary boundaries that we're talking about. And one thing that is crucial and the link between all of these, there's just one industry that we are failing to talk about at the moment that is the major contributing factor to a lot of the issues, the environmental issues that we're facing today. Climate change and global warming are definitely high up there. Global studies have shown that as much as 51% of direct greenhouse gas emissions come from animal farming. And there is the astonishing figure that has come from the Climate Healer study, which is that 87% of global greenhouse gas emissions can be accounted for within the animal farming industry. And this calculation has been arrived at using the opportunity cost of the land that is being used under the animal farming industry. So what we're doing at the moment is we're clearing large swaths of land, large swaths of forest. We're setting them ablaze. You must have heard reports of the Amazon, Cuba, Australia, even some parts of India, of large uncontrollable forest fires. Those are man-made. human-made forest fires. We're clearing up for our forests to free up space for grazing these animals. Can we go to the slide, the next one, the graph, the land use graph?
The land use graph. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So as you can see, of all of the habitable land on the surface of the planet, so all of the ice-free land, half of that is devoted to agriculture. Okay, and of all of the agricultural land, 3/4, which is about upwards of 70%, is being used to raise livestock, for whether it is for meat or eggs or dairy. And this large amount of land that we're using for livestock farming is not even meeting a third of our protein requirements, right?
Mhm.
And what have we heard about food and protein and being strong? It's animal protein, right? And this protein myth has been put into our heads for years and years through marketing and advertising and campaigns, making us think that the only way to get protein is through the flesh or the secretions of these livestock animals, whether they're pigs or cows or chickens, right? As you can see in the numbers, globally, only 37% of our protein requirements are being met through animal protein. That's an astonishing number. So why do you think we are perpetuating this and perpetrating this wasteful exercise of utilizing majority of our habitable land, majority of our agricultural land into an activity which is not only detrimental to all of our environment, to the animals, but also to our own health? As you can see on the next slide, most of the non-communicable diseases can be attributed to the consumption of animal-based food, whether it is heart failure or lung disease or the risk of stroke or diabetes. These are all linked to the consumption of animal-based foods. And then on the flip side of the overconsumption of food lies the lack of access to food. As you can see on the next slide, hunger-related causes are killing more people globally than any other cause. What is it that is not making us make the switch? What is it going to take to understand? And I think we all think that it's not just one thing that may help you understand this, and that is why it is so important to have to understand the importance of a plant-based system at the very core of this model of Doughnut Economic, to understand our planetary boundaries. And can we have the next slide? And then metaphorically, cut the middle animal. We are growing enough food on the planet today to feed billions of us. We're 7.5 billion humans on the planet, but we are growing enough food to feed 10 billion. And yet, hunger and starvation plague our species. We have a solution here. And the question is not whether it is the right solution or not. The question really is, how can we implement this solution? How can we arrive at a world that is kind to all? And the answer lies in veganism being at the very core of it. And the symbol that you see is the symbol of Vegan World 2026, which we're calling as the lifeline for the planet. 2026 is not the deadline, but the lifeline for our planet. It's a timeline by which, if we can manage to implement a well thought plant-based food system globally, then we can be well on way to manage the climate crises, I say plural, that we're facing today. Yes.
Should I take it from here?
Yeah.
So as Pareen said, a vegan world would not only help us get within the donut from outside, such that we live within the ecological ceiling of the planet, because the dominant cause of these 4 red wedges that we see that are outside the circle, that are exerting, an unsustainable level of damage to the planet at the moment. The leading cause of all these things, as Pareen mentioned, is animal agriculture by a significant amount. This would also free up resources that would help enable the rest of humanity to achieve a minimum social foundation for themselves on all 12 of these factors. And through these talks, we learn more about how animal agriculture is even related to social equality, a political voice, peace and justice, gender equality, and other such things. And Pareen already made the case for how it could help with water use, land use, health, and things like that. And so we've been working on for the past 5 years a way to change the system and a way to reorganize ourselves in a way that can help us measure the health of the planet in a more fulfilling way. Because we spoke about, what we measure is what we get. And so we need to create a financial system which sort of promotes the health of the planet instead of promoting profits at the expense of planet. Currently, there's inadequate reporting on the climate and the state of the earth, and so we need a system through and through from the core to help us envision and think about what the problem is and how we can do that. And Aquarius does precisely that. If you go to the next slide, we can see what I spoke about. This growth-directed trend has left developing countries in the bottom left of this graph and so-called developed countries in the top right of this graph. But what we should actually be shooting for, if you go to the next slide, is to live within the means of the donut, which is the top left of this graph. And no country is here at the moment. And so in this respect, all countries are developing countries. And the current financial model is grossly insufficient in dealing with this. It's precisely like, if you go to the next slide, it's like trying to cut up a cake with a chainsaw. It's the wrong tool for the job. And so we need a different tool. If you go to the next slide, the current financial system incentivizes growth. And so it's designed for growth. We see what growth looks like here because, we want trees to grow such that we can then cut them down and sell them for timber. But it takes a completely different model if it's designed for health, because that values the intrinsic, that recognizes the intrinsic value that health has and sort of accounts for that in a way that can allow us to deal with our economic activities in a way that, as Ken mentioned earlier, counts things that are valuable to the upkeep of the earth, but not necessarily things that are currently taxable. For example, within a household, if we think about a parent who has to stay back at home to take care of the child, the other parent is only capable of going to work because one of them is staying behind and tending to the child. And so the work that the parent does staying at home is just as important or more important than the breadwinning parent who's going out to participate in the economy. But right now, the current system only recognizes the breadwinning parent and fails to recognize the parent who stays behind to take care of the child, which thus enables the parent to go and earn the bread. And in quite the same way, we've designed a system called Aquarius. We can go to the next slide. That recognizes the innate value that human beings add in relation to each other, in volunteering for things that are necessary, in helping up with cleaning up the environment, in tending to caring for your children, in helping your grandparents, in things like that. These are things that are currently not recognized by the economic system as it's currently been designed, but that these are things that are healthy for the upkeep of the economy. And so we've devised a system that does precisely this. We could have a conversation now, the four of us, about Aquarius. It's fundamentally different to the old system because the old system is designed around a central control of power. And when power is centrally controlled, it can be easily influenced. And as Ken pointed out, it's creating ever increasing inequality in the world. And so we need a distributed framework for our currency system because all of us have value and all of us create value. And so the design for the model needs to represent and reflect that. And in the same way, we need a regenerative model, one which instead of promotes the quick commodification of Earth's resources, it promotes the efficient use of the Earth's resources in a way that can allow us to live in balance with our planet. Completely opposite to what the current system does, but it's exactly what the current system needs.
Thank you
Ken,
so
you're
much.
muted.
Yeah. I unmuted you, Ken.
Okay, good. I'm sort of thinking that we've had a great opportunity here in the last year and a half of having a crisis, a global crisis. It's touched everybody. We know we're all one globe now. There isn't any question about it. We know that we didn't have the resources available to take care of people during this time period. We had to do supplements. We had to do big bills. We had to do loans. We had to go into the future and burden our grandchildren with the funds that we had to pay out just to survive during this time period of COVID. I think this is a test. I think it's shown us very clearly the economy is not ready. It's not up to what we need to do. We need a way that we can take care of people in bad times and in good times where there's safety nets that are meaningful and get the job done. And the top-down economic system just doesn't do that. So this is not just a good idea we're talking about today. This is the essential step to the future. And I think if we don't take this seriously right now and very urgently, that we've got a big problem on our hands in the future. We're going to see disasters way beyond anything we imagine. So I hate to be a negative voice, but I want to get clear that this is not a game being played here. This has been obvious for decades, and now it's coming home to roost. We've got to get this going.
Right. You got to get it done. Absolutely. So that's why I'm so glad, Ken, that you connected with Pareen and Krish to work on this, because it's
What
to
a
me
joy.
We are working on it after all.
Right. Yes. I mean, it is an intergenerational bridge, connecting what was there with what needs to happen, and it is also showing the youth that we don't have time to despair and things like that. We don't have time for that. We have work to do, and
absolutely.
And it is.
And I think.
Go ahead, Pareen.
Yeah, no, please. I think that the fact that we're all here together from different generations, I think that this is a testament to this very sentiment that we need to get working on it. We could either just give in and think that it's going to end anyway, or but we're hopeful, and I feel like a lot of times the message may not be received in that way, but I want to emphasize on this. we wouldn't be working on this today had we not been hopeful.
Right.
This is, in fact, well, after all, it is a promise to Kimaya
Yeah.
and to all the kids of her generation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, Kimaya kind of put the onus on me, saying, "You're doing your job." That's the way she said, actually. Do your job.
Yeah.
Right. But
And to me,
I
my 13 grandkids and 5 great grandkids, I think about them every day now. It's really
Right.
critical.
Right. Yeah. But what we are. Go ahead, Krish.
I adopted, I inherited some of these problems of the world, but, that doesn't mean that it's not my responsibility or part of my responsibility to do what I can to help, take us to a healthier place and sort of envision a world and help co-create a world with you fine people that can accommodate a balance with nature and while simultaneously allowing all of us to thrive.
Right. So how does the Aquarius system accomplish that? How does it change the model compared to the current model?
For
Right.
starters,
Krish, go ahead.
For starters, the current model incentivizes growth and doesn't really keep an eye on the health of the planet. And Aquarius does precisely that. It incentivizes from the core of its design the health of the planet and healthy living, on all scales for individuals, for businesses, for communities, and all the way up to the health of the planet.
Pareen, do you want to add something to that?
Yes. So the whole premise of Aquarius lies not on, as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation as well, the purpose of work right now is to earn a living.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it is glorified that you need to earn a living and be independent, being independent is perfectly amazing. But unfortunately, this concept is used to glorify and to push people into labor, no matter what their circumstances are. In today's day and age, you need to get a job, you need to either have inherited wealth, or you need to have perhaps created an invention that will, feed you for the rest of your life and possibly your generations, or you have to sell your labor to earn a living, or you have to beg. Those are the 4 main ways in which in today's system you can earn a living. The Aquarius system model rather envisions that the idea of working does not have to revolve around putting food on the table. You work to fuel your passion. You work to serve the community. It's all around the community, understanding the circumstances and the situations that communities and the individuals within are in, what their needs are, and how they can live in tandem with the environment and with other communities together on the planet
Right.
that we call home.
Like we discussed in the beginning, the meaning of the word economy is to manage one's household. And currently, the current model is doing a poor job at allowing us to recognize what that means within the cost mechanism that it currently has. For example, we know that flying is really bad for the environment, but airplane tickets are so cheap. And so there's no mechanism within the economy for us to actually understand the true cost of a product. These costs are like dubbed external costs and then like swept under a rug. But we need to recognize that these costs we are interconnected. Like my life is in your hands because we're all on the same planet. Is that an echo?
There's a bit of an echo from you. Yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I can mute. Yeah. I'll mute Ken's mic.
Does this help?
Yeah, it helps. Go ahead.
Okay. We all live on this earth, and we recognize now during the time of COVID, as Ken mentioned, and otherwise, that we're more interconnected than ever. And my life is in your hands because we're all on the same planet. And so we need to recognize that and then thus acknowledge the true costs that our choices have and then make better decisions as a consequence of realizing that cost. And what Aquarius does is that it brings that cost into the fold and allows us to carry on our economic activity while still recognizing the whole, earth footprint cost of our choices. It doesn't tell you what to do. It just informs you on knowing what the true impact of your choices are. So you can still go about, like carrying a business as you would in the way that is familiar to you, working with the market in the way that's familiar to you. But, it just tweaks a small thing which allows us to, a small thing, a big thing. It just changes the whole paradigm in terms of, rather than promoting a mindset of growth, it designs a financial system that, has at its core the health of the planet. Seems big, but it's really not. Like it's what the planet needs. It allows us to, become the economy that we need to be, to manage the resources of the earth while simultaneously supporting and empowering the people. We're muted. Everyone's muted.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I think Ken was trying to say something.
Go ahead, Ken.
It's like the representative government that we now use very much around the world. It's just too slow. It's just too slow to respond. It's got to come quicker. It's got to come at the local level, and it's got to come where face-to-face dialogue makes a difference and makes things happen. It's very much got to do with fluidity. And we now have the technology to do that. And that's the big difference between now and when I was learning economics. We now have the technology to do that. We have the technology to have instantaneous reactions and communications. We have that.
That's a great point. This has never been possible before in human history. Only now have we had, free access to knowledge, collective knowledge as a consequence of the internet, and, a global world, which is, more interconnected than ever, and that allows us to organize ourselves in more meaningful ways. So this is a part of the natural progression of time, and, this time has come.
It'll all work fine if I can learn how to use my cell phone. That's the
Yeah.
You already are on way to that, Ken. You're doing a terrific job.
It's fun.
Yeah,
but you're doing great, Ken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in that way, this has shown us the past couple of years have shown us how our economies are going to be based on free sharing of ideas and on collaboration, not on trying to establish ownership over ideas, but on sharing them freely.
Or manipulating for control. Yeah.
Precisely, an open source economy and ecology.
Right.
And that's truly what the Aquarius model envisions.
Yeah.
But what you have. Sorry, go ahead.
Again, we've got the technology to do it. That's the important thing, the technology and the know-how. And that's what Krish has been working on for some years now. So, we're way down the road on this. This is going to be exciting.
It's exciting times indeed, But it is one of the implications of a plant-based food system that we need to make sure that everyone understands, and that we are taking a huge step in that direction already. So thank you all very much. It was fantastic as always, and I look forward to continuing our work together.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
Absolutely. Yes.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
This was great.